to celebrate the work of three great portraitists, and we're going to see the work from them today. Jasmine is not able to join us, who's going to be the first presenter. But in the meantime, I want to say hi to everybody there and to introduce Nicholas Fahey, who I've known and especially known his father for many years. Next year is the 40th anniversary of the Fahey Klein Gallery. So for those that have not been there, you have to go. It is such an important part of the photo scene here in Los Angeles, and of course, Nicholas and David take it worldwide, and they're involved in so many different elements of photography. Nick started out, of course, being around the who's who of photography for Peter Beard, Herb Ritz, when he was growing up at the gallery and shooting some stills and other things there. I mean, so what a group of people to be around. And then you started getting into progressing with the way the world moves and doing online streaming and just moving us into the 21st century, and also doing something spectacular out in the desert to help out people that might not have an opportunity otherwise. So Nick, I'm going to hand it over to you, and maybe if you wouldn't mind mentioning a little bit about those elements of what you're
Sure.
doing.
Yeah.
Be great.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. It was, awesome to get to be a part of this always with LACP. Um, like Mark said, I grew up at the gallery, just was always kind of the space to be in and just, normal for me, I guess. But the one thing that I really took away from it was, my dad was helping a lot of different entrepreneurs, whether it was a publisher, whether it was an artist. And I've always seen it kind of through that lens, and that's kind of brought me to doing a lot of different projects. Obviously we have the whole gallery where we've got a Paul Outerbridge show with Matthew Ralston that we just closed, and we've got Julia Fullerton Batten opening on Thursday night, if of next week, if you guys are available. Her Brits exhibition opening tonight at the One Gallery. So we're constantly doing that. But then in the desert, I have the High Desert Art Fair, where we're bringing people out to Pioneer Town, doing an entire takeover of the Pioneer Town Motel, where we put galleries in all the rooms. We have a concert at Pappy and Harriet's this year, and that's March 28th and 29th of of next year. And then another thing that's really exciting for me right now is the Inglewood Photography Festival. I'm a founding board member, and we're working with the city of Inglewood to bring international photographers from all over the world to exhibit there, and to show in conjunction with local Inglewood and Los Angeles photographers. So yeah, I've got a lot of irons in the fire, plus a lot more, and also just constantly working on books. I think that's something that's really exciting and always fun. Everybody's always changing their websites, but a book is printed and it's physical, and it's a way to keep that there. So, but yeah, that's I think all I got.
And yeah, so please, it's a must. It's mandatory. I can't enforce it, but if you guys are anywhere in the LA vicinity, you've got to pop into the Fahey Klein Gallery, and the desert thing sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I mean, we've got a lot of really great galleries coming, and it's just about art fairs are so expensive, and it's such a challenge for dealers to work within that space, and beat in a financial challenge, it doesn't allow them to work with new artists and show new work and give new artists new chances. So that's a large part about this fair is, we're doing it a dealer run fair, trying to, make it as cost as effective as possible for these dealers so that they can afford to bring something new and exciting that, they can't bring to a big fair because they gotta, make a lot more money at a big fair to pay off the costs.
It's fantastic. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to show Kevin is going to show a little slideshow of what this new exhibition is all about. And th then Nick, I'd actually like to come back to you briefly for a statement about the work, but I think it would be nice
Yeah.
to see the work first, and then we'll come back to you. So, Kevin, can you take it away? Great, thank you, Kevin. So, Nick, just quick thoughts about the process of looking at images, and I mean, it looks like there's a real expansion in terms of the definition of portraiture.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's an expansion to the definition of portraiture, but I think at the end of the day, it's always about kind of allowing people to be seen, whether that's so, I tried to get at that in that statement, where it's like, if it's the artist, yeah, but also the subject, and the subject allowing themselves to be seen. And so I just think there's just so many different ways of seeing people and thinking about being seen. And so I think that's why, portraiture is often a very hard topic within kind of fine art photography. It's like one of, especially, from just a sales standpoint. So it is an interesting thing in that sense of, how do you evolve the medium and the practice and the conversation, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, just and really fascinating selections. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Uh, but any thoughts before we move
Oh,
on
I
to?
just, it's just always great to see, where, because we all do have a collective consciousness, and so it is interesting because we're all looking at the same pictures every day through social media and through certain algorithms that we're probably all getting similar stuff. And so it is interesting to see how people, you know, use that kind of visual vocabulary of making images and, seeing those trends and the things that kind of they go back and forth. And yeah, it's exciting. I like looking at pictures. I mean, I'm lucky I get to do it all day.
Yeah, exactly. Or I like to use the word fortunate because
Sure.
we all put ourselves, I mean, we're here,
Yeah.
so we put ourselves in there. So I don't think of it as luck, but we're fortunate. So let's check out Jasmine's work. She is not here, but we've queued up, or Kevin's queued up, an interesting presentation of her work. So Kevin, you
Cool.
will hand it over to you.
Won third place for Into Your Eyes, photographic portraiture in the digital era. I'm currently at work, but I would wish I could be there live on Zoom with everybody today, but I still feel really grateful to have this opportunity to share a bit about my work and my practice with everyone here today. So thank you. I'm a photographer and visual artist based here in Los Angeles. I work across commercial fashion, music photography, editorial, fine art. Um, and my journey with photography was organic for me. I've always had a camera around. I remember shooting my brothers when we were young, doing like fake fashion editorials, to then me becoming a model. And throughout my travels, I would always have a camera on me. And then now I work as a freelance photographer, commercial and fine art. I work with both analog and digital. I like how slow and intentional you can be with film, especially in the dark room. Yeah, I also love like digital as well, the fast pace of it and working through an idea you want to catch. And that's kind of how Untitled in Pink came about, was the idea of catching an idea. So I'm going to share my screen. Untitled in Pink is an ongoing self-portrait series that explores themes of identity, transformation, and reclaiming agency. The pink dot stickers you see throughout the work function as both concealment and revelation. They obscure, certain aspects of identity while also like simultaneously like drawing attention to them, that feels like it creates like a tension between like what we hide and what we choose to show. And for me, this series is deeply personal. It's about the constant evolution of self, the multiplicities of identities we carry, the power of choosing how we want to be seen. You know, the color pink itself is loaded with, you know, associations of like femininity and like softness, and yet like I choose to use it as reclaiming transformation and strength, like using it as a tool. And for me, like working with self-portraiture like allows me a particular kind of freedom. Like I'm both like the subject and the creator, which means I control the narrative entirely. And to me, that is so vulnerable, you know, to talk about self through art and experience, as we all do. And yet there's power in that as well. So I'm going to share with you guys a few of the other pieces in Untitled in Pink. Go through. And so my broader practice continues these themes across different contexts, like whether I'm shooting for my commercial clients, working on music campaigns, or creating editorial work for magazines. I'm always interested in how we construct identity through images, like how photography can be both documentation and fiction and reality and dream. Like I'm influenced by work that makes you question what you see and is surreal and thought-provoking, like Wolfgang Tillsman and Tim Walker and Cindy Sherman, who is my birthday twin, or we're birthday twins. Oops. Yeah. So thank you again, the opportunity to be able to record this on Zoom. I wish I could be there, but you know, congrats to all the selected artists here today. Thank you to LACP, Fahey Klein Gallery, and everyone that is here. How do I pronounce this? Everyone that is here. Is this still my screen? I don't know. If it's my screen, you see everything right now. Yeah, thanks for everyone that's here supporting other artists and all the work, and take care. Thank you so much.
But Jasmine's personality comes through the screen, doesn't it? That's great and beautiful, beautiful work. And really, once again, what Nick and I were talking about earlier about expanding the parameters of what is portraiture. So next up is Grace Heidtke. I believe pronouncing it correctly. Do you have anything to say in particular about what we just saw, Nick, with
Yeah,
Jasmine?
no, I mean, I like Jasmine's work. I've followed that work for a while. I've known of her stuff, so it was, it was nice to, but I've never seen her, I guess, digitally met her or seen an interview with her or whatever that was. So it was nice to, hear her voice and, hear her perspective of what she was doing.
That's the reality these days, right? And this is part of the digital world. And you talk about alienation and distance. Are we better off as now than when we were just analog people?
I mean, change is constant. You can't ever stop change. So you got to just figure out how to live your best life in that change.
Well said. And what you're doing with these platforms, pretty amazing. I mean, you've embraced it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always about finding new audiences. And I say that to, or finding the audience, and I say that to photographers all the time. It's like you've got to understand what you're making and who you're making it for. If you're making it within your community or if you're just making it for yourself, you just have to identify what those things are and who it's for, and if it's for you and nobody else, that's great. That's, there's nothing wrong with that. But if like you want to be a part of everything bigger, and I think that includes the art world, the art world has to participate in other places to find other audiences to kind of bring in. So anyway.
Right. It's evolution. I mean, it's sort of like, isn't it the platypus that has figured out a way to make it through the world from one thing to another?
Yep.
So we have to be platypi.
The platypus.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if the plural
Yeah.
is platypi, but no,
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you. And so now next up, we got Grace Heidtke. I think if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's funny. It reminds me of there's a famous Japanese crab that people won't eat called a heike, uh, because it has a face of a human. And so it's a fascinating thing. So if you guys ever want to sort of see where portraiture can go in terms of how we see in a crab a human face, and if anybody looks that up, you will see it. It's unless you're a cannibal, you're not going to want to eat this. And there's nothing wrong with being a cannibal. If that's what you want to be. But anyway, so look at the Japanese hake crab or hakigane, and it would be really fascinating. So let's hand it over to Grace and check out her work, second place. And of course, it doesn't matter, first place, second place, third place. You guys are all in the arena. Fantastic uh, to be there. And Grace, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm Grace Heidtke. I just moved to Los Angeles probably about 2 months ago. I'm coming from Northern California, like Carmel area, Monterey County. This is probably like the first photo contest, if you want to call it that I've ever submitted to. So it was kind of like a huge deal for me to hear back and see that I placed within it. I've been photographing for, I want to say like 10 years now. Um, I started off kind of just using my dad's camera. Um, he got it like a Canon T4i and it was awesome. And then I was introduced to the world of portraiture through a friend when I was like 15 years old. And then it kind of spiraled into just becoming my entire life. Um, I ended up developing a whole portraiture business out of it. And then I think with doing that, um, it kind of veered me away from why I loved photography in the first place, which is a really common thing when you make something that you love into your entire life and the way that you make money, you end up kind of forgetting why you even started to begin with. So, when I realized that and realized that that was the direction my photography was taking as well, I ended up taking, I want to say like a 2 or 3 year long break from doing portraits as a business and as the way that I was making money. And I think with that, it kind of gave me some space to reevaluate the ways that I took photos, what I took photos of, and why photography was still very important to me. Um, and I still enjoy portraiture. The photo that I submitted obviously is a portrait, but I think taking space from doing photos where people were paying me to take photos of them, where the entire photo shoot was very dictated by what their vision was rather than what mine was, and being able to get back into photography where I could take photographs of what I saw and what intrigued me and what I'm interested in has kind of brought me back here. And it's why I decided, I think, to take this chance and submit to this. And I'm very happy that I'm here now and able to share some of those photographs now. So I'll share my screen here. So this was the photo um, that I submitted. It's sentimental to me because I actually took this in Barcelona on Port Vell. I called it Still de Mar because the name of this area is called Rambla de Mar. And it's sentimental because literally I was in the same place 5 years ago and I had taken this photo, and it was probably at the time one of the most uh the kind of candid photos that I was interested in taking. And upon taking this photo, it made me realize like this is what I like. I like finding things. I think part of the search is part of the fun of being a photographer, searching for that thing that makes you go, oh, I want to, I think, keep something from this moment, something that is tangible. And I just really liked the way this man was standing and the way that his shadow kind of created this second person next to him against this like glass panel. And then upon returning like 5 years later, and I took this photo, I kind of realized like I'm pretty sure this is the same guy. And then kind of upon examining it, I realized like this is definitely the same man. So this became this like very sentimental thing, and it made me kind of realize that the documentary style of photography was something that I really enjoyed, and kind of created a story out of it. These photos, of course, are not part of any series, but I think just I love the comparison and the side by side of being able to look at two different images and not only seeing, I think, the way that I have grown in my photography and just learning not only the technical side of it, but also um, learning what my style was. And I guess with that, the last slide I have to share is just the thing that I'm kind of working on right now because I'm in this place where I'm still in the works, I think, of developing a style and realizing that having a style is something that is important to being a photographer. Um, Taking the break from the business side of photography, where I had developed a style that I knew would be marketable, for lack of a better word, that I knew it was the kind of photographs that other people were looking for of themselves. Um, Realizing that that's not what I wanted to do with my photography. I wanted to have my own style. I wanted to take the photos and see the images that I wanted to see. And I think that's kind of what's come of this year's break that I've been taking. And it's really these two photographs. It's four photographs that I've kind of grouped into side by side comparison. They actually are one large photograph that I divided up. It's kind of a study of me looking back at my old photographs that didn't fit into my portrait business style that I never really shared with people, and reevaluating them and then kind of looking for the things in those photos that were the reason why I even took the photo to begin with. These both come from Wengen, Switzerland. It was a trip I just took alone and brought my camera along and decided to just walk around and see what I could find. And I think that's where I'm at right now, which is kind of the great search of finding my style and I guess, finding myself back into this practice where it's just really for me, and no longer for anyone else. So, yeah, I think that's about it.
And you had mentioned when we were talking earlier, and you've also written that you're really now more attracted to sort of like the everyday moments and just looking for life and what's out there. And so I guess portraiture can be a part of that. It just depends what you come across on a daily basis, right?
Right, exactly. I think it's about me going out and being the photographer that I had started off being, where I used to just take photos of like grass and strawberries because it was so cool to see on a digital camera how clear of a photo I could get.
Mm.
Um, it's more like now the moment itself has become super valuable to me rather than I think the posed and planned photo shoots that I used to do.
Yeah. And I mean, you're at a more of a beginning in terms of just age wise, not in the maturity of your photos, but in terms of, you're allowing yourself just to be open and see which way the winds flow and develop and you chart that path as you go along, I gather.
Yeah, I just turned 26, so
Yeah.
after having done it photography for 10 years, it's only now I think where I've really realized that there's a value in having my own style that um that inspires me to keep being a photographer and not just leaving it behind because it wasn't going in the direction that I wanted it to a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's great to have such a clear thought of where you're at this place, and that helps you move forward. So thank you so much, Grace, and we'll have questions for you later. Uh,
Thank you, Mark.
and so next up is somebody who has been in professional photography for a while, and she's our first place winner, Lacey Terrell. And
Hi.
yeah, do you want to, Nick? Do you have some thoughts about why you picked Lacey's shot to stand on top of the platform?
Yeah, I mean, it was just, you know, one that kind of looked back at you in a lot of ways, obviously. And I think, you know, what I was talking about earlier and that thing of, you know, seeing but also being seen, you know, that person just felt very seen in who they were and what they were doing. And, you know, within the context of performance or without the context of performance, that's just who that person was. And so it's, you know, as much as it is nice to see, you know, different processes and different, you know, technical things, it's also nice to just see a really clean black and white portrait that still is, you know, feels, you know, forward and you know, still asking new questions and, you know, still engaging people. You know, like I think about all the time that, you know, humans have been communicating with images and symbols on walls longer than the languages we have today. And so it's that thing of, you know, we're all humans, and that's kind of one of the things that makes us humans, is being able to talk about it and think about it. And so it's, you know, I'm always looking for pictures that can bring in all different types of people into enjoying photography. And so that's another reason why I picked that picture, is because I feel like, you know, not just this audience could see it as an amazing image, but other audiences outside of, you know, our traditional circle of people who, you know, call themselves photographers or fine art photography lovers. You know, it's how do we, you know, make our tribe bigger, I guess, in a way.
Right.
You know, and bring people in and get people comfortable talking about pictures, you know, because you're just learning how to be more of a human, in my opinion. So
Right.
yeah.
And it is amazing that our medium is barely 200 years old. When Yesp, well, I'll get in trouble with the Brits. I should throw Talbot in there too. But that this is barely 200 years old, and the ability to then really freeze a moment, because in the beginning it was such slow um, surfaces that were not very sensitive. That this is a pretty new, relatively new medium. But now we have the ability to uh, document as close to reality as possible. But then people have decided then to go off and move it away from reality. And now we see all of a sudden now in this digital world manipulate that reality.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a beautiful thing, right? Because, you know, photography changed painting, obviously.
Yeah.
And, you know, how many different types of painting emerged because they could no longer paint what photography could do, you know, and with technology and artificial intelligence and all of this stuff that's happening, it's just the next, you know, iteration of the technological evolution of how we see things and how we present things.
Well, beautifully said. So Lacey, we're handing it over to you.
Hi, guys.
So you're in front of the camera now. I know how much you love it because you shooting stills of the who's who in the film world.
I'm much better behind the camera, guys. But
Yeah.
it's so many things to say. But first, just thank you so much, Nicholas. Thank you so much to LACP for this recognition and giving me a chance to share some of my work. But to what you guys were just discussing about the sort of the history of photography, uh, it's not a challenge per se, but dealing with a subject matter like the circus, which also has such a long-term history, and to hear that this project can still be seen in a new light is very encouraging, and it's what my mission has been crazily for 25 years. But so before I go into the circus project, just want to say a little bit about my background. I did go to undergrad for photography and graduate school. And my portraits and working with, I'm a people person. So this screen thing is very disorienting for me. But funny, we were talking about wanting to be connected with this portraiture exhibit, and now I feel so disconnected. I'm like out here in the void. But anyhow, my background has been with photographing, snapshot style my whole life. Basically, the camera has been an extension of me since I was in high school. And then I sort of got into street photography, going out into the world and photographing strangers, essentially. And I was very inspired by Cartier-Bresson and the Magnum photographers. And when I went to undergrad in Colorado, my professor, Albert Chong, who was a very conceptual photographer in the 80s, was like, okay, so now you have the decisive moment thing down, but we're going to do something different. And so I learned all about the constructed image and creating images to be photographed, creating sets or creating things, sculptures to be photographed. Then I graduate with my BFA, and I do an internship with Gilles Perez from Magnum in New York. And I walk into his office. I love this story. Photography is so complicated and complex. I go into his office and he's like, so you're a fine art photographer, are you? And I was just like, anyway, I was about to travel to Asia. And so he was very kind and helped me to sort of get ready for my photojournalist expedition. But it just made me realize I do have, the photography is so complex, and the way we approach portraiture, the way we approach image making is so multidimensional and can be very confusing. And then when you do add in this digital age, and now I can't even go here, but the AI thing, that's for another day. So anyway, I got my MFA at California College of the Arts, and I was back to doing conceptual portraiture. I was sort of looking at the Victorian era and issues of identity, and back to creating sets and costumes. And I'm telling you all of this to get you up to speed with the circus. And I'm just going to share my screen while I'm chatting away. Basically, before I get to the circus, I'm in LA because I'll get to the LA part. So in graduate school, I was doing this Victorian work, and a friend of mine died. And at the memorial service, I learned that his brother was working with a small circus. And while I was completely engrossed in another body of work, I had always wanted to photograph a small circus, or a circus, but didn't know how. I grew up outside of New York City, so Madison Square Garden was the only circus I had experienced. And I said, well, if they come to California, please have them call me. And again, my brain was in conceptual portraiture, different art photography. And it was a very difficult time with the passing of my friend, and my friend who was in the circus called, and they said, we're going to be in Stockton, come out and visit. And I went to this little circus. It's a tiny one-ring circus. It's called the Culpeper and Merriweather Great Combined Circus. And I fell in love with this community. I think in my background, I've always been drawn towards microcosms and communities, being a people person. And the timing of meeting the circus was very important. So I've been working on this project since 1996. I say it's a 25-year project, but and I say that it sort of ended in 2021, but the truth is it has not ended. It's just that the last 5 years, we all know, have been a little bit mixed up. So it will end eventually, but it's ongoing. So I'm going to read a little bit to introduce you. Basically, my project is called The Passing Ring, and it's a collaboration with the Culpeper and Merriweather Great Combined Circus. And my intention is to create it's really an extensive portrait of this world. And my pictures, as you'll see, I'll scroll through a bunch shortly. I sort of zoom in and do a lot of work with a lot of the artists. like this picture. This is Heidi Wendani, and she grew up in the Ringling Brothers family and just grew up in circus. And she had been with Culpeper and Merriweather many years by the time I met her. But so my project, I zoom in and photograph the individuals, and then I'll zoom out to create performance pictures and landscapes and just details of life being on the road and as part of this world. But so I wanted to read to you. In the spring of 1996, my film camera was the admission ticket to the Culpeper and Merriweather Great Combined Circus, a traditional one-ring traveling show which sent me on an unexpected and circular path for the next 25 years, at once becoming close to and grappling with this vast morsel of American culture, while at the hand of an ever-changing medium. So the fact that this project has been going on for so long, literally, the technology of photography has changed since the mid-90s. I've changed as an artist. And so this project is so near and dear to me, but it's also massive. I've shot with all different formats, film and digital, black and white and color. And the way I'm sharing with you right now, I'm really trying to focus on the portraits, the human portraits in the project. And I'm trying to do it in an organized fashion, sorry. So we're gonna go through some black and white images and then some color pictures. This is not necessarily how I would sequence things in a book or an exhibition, because I really believe that to create the portrait, I'm after the poetic spirit of a circus and the kaleidoscopic nature. So for me, that includes black and white and color, landscape and portrait, details, performance pictures, abstract. So in general, this is a very pared down version. But so these are just some black and white portraits that I've made over the time. I feel like the definition of a portrait, it can morph and change. And when you have a subject that you're photographing over time, these two are together. The picture on the left, this is BJ, who is one of the original founders of this small circus. It was one of the first pictures I ever took of him. And on the right is one of the last pictures I ever have. He's alive, but this was one of the last images we made on the road. And so when you have a subject that you're photographing over decades, that relationship changes and in a way can complicate things, to be honest. We can talk about that in the question and answer, but so the characters that I've met, I was able to travel all throughout the Western states, west of the Mississippi, tiny towns, places that I would never have gone to otherwise. So now we're into the color section. That again, for me, overall lends to this portrait of a community, of a lifestyle, of a little microcosm. But I've separated them here today for you. So this is my protagonist. I really feel like the big top is the main character. All of these disparate people come together underneath this, whether it's the spectators, the performers, the working people, the big top is where it's at. This is Simone. She also has grown up in this circus. She's now currently one of the owners. She and her husband own the circus in its present day. This is Simone's sister. This is a very family-oriented show that I've been with. And I've seen these kids grow up. I mean, this is Lana. She's probably now 20. Tabana. I have a lot of images of the crowd. I feel like I need to include the crowd in this portrait. And some of the faces, in the various states have been quite something. This is Pat the mechanic and his skunk, Penelope, which I had never seen. my life. Georgia also has grown up her legacy of the circus family. So I wanted to read to you a quote from E.B. White. "The circus comes as close to being the world in microcosm as anything I know. It is universal and complex magic." And so the thing for me is when you're working so closely or over such a long period of time with individuals, there's inherently an attachment that can form, and that sometimes lends to even better image making. And sometimes it can confuse things when we're talking about representation and wanting to, is it my vision or is it their presentation of themselves? It gets a little bit murky, again, to chat about later. So before I close, I just wanted to read this. This was a journal entry I wrote in 2011, Bakersfield, May 8th, 2011, 6:32 a.m. "Here it is again, the same lonely feeling that creeps in every time as I watch the caravan pull away, knowing I will be heading in a different direction alone. No matter how I know I will see them again, there is something to this feeling that the family is leaving or that the show is going on without me. The feeling of belonging to a flock, a pack, or a tribe is really exaggerated on the circus, especially this one, much like on a film set. So to see them all leave, no matter how tired of sleeping in the car or in need of a shower I am, leaves me with a bit of a pang every time." So I like to say that I met the circus before meeting the film business. And so yes, to Mark's point, I work in Los Angeles as a still photographer on motion pictures. And when I was finishing art school, I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make a living as an artist? And I learned about this position, and there is a still photographer on almost every film set. And when I went to visit my very first set up in Oakland while I was still finishing school, I approached the set and I was like, wait a minute, this is just like the circus, the tents and the trailers. And so that's been my life for my work. Again, of course, tons of portraiture and people, photographing people all the time in that work. But my fine art projects are the sort of the fuel that keeps me going. And one day this project will be a book. I'm going to leave you guys here with this image, maybe that we can discuss this. Again, this is Paulina, one of the circus kids that I've known forever. And I feel like this juxtaposition sort of speaks to the dilemma of photography of, what is representation? What is our perspective? How do they want to be presented? How do we protect the people? I'm just going to leave it there. I'm just going to drop that one there. So I hope this has been interesting.
Oh, well, that's a major understatement. It's fantastic. And it really reminds me of Mary Ellen Mark's Indian Circus and Susan Meisalas with Carnival Strippers. I mean, yeah, I definitely
Dan Arbus.
see a book. Yeah, I mean, people, this is really sort of like the people on the fringes of society, right? And Nick, I would love your feedback because you're such an expert on books as well. What's your thought?
Well, I mean, I think it's, something that I'm always thinking about is generational transfers, of things like, you're naming artists and bodies of work that are, seminal to the language of photography, but there's also generations that don't know that. There's a whole younger group of people who, haven't had access to that stuff. So, for me, it's always, how are you continuing that conversation so that you can bring in this new generation and then talk about, your influences and the, larger conversation of scene, kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, it's always about, so in that sense, it's about, finding that audience, who's the audience that's going to, see this and want this and, absorb it in the way that you want to present it in.
Right. Well, so I studied with Jim Goldberg in undergrad, and obviously a hero to so many. But his book Raised by Wolves has been a huge inspiration, and the way in which he sews different formats, color, black and white, text over time, the whole thing, like that has been my inspiration from the get-go with this project.
Yeah.
This wasn't meant to be a 25-year project, but like life happens and other art, I've been invested in, I work in a lot of different projects at the same time.
Yeah.
But to do something different, you know, Mary Ellen, huge influence, Diane Arbus, huge influence, and my, you know, dealing with a subject that has been photographed so often is tricky, you know, to do it differently. And that has been my mission, and it's difficult, you know, to
But it's amazing to have that practice, right? Because after 25 years, it really is a practice, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that's good in that sense of, you know, like you talked about, you've looked at it through not only points of view that you've had emotionally as you've come at different times, but also technologically points of view, you know, different cameras, different things like that, and evolved with it and evolved how people are seeing things. So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the film, I mean, to be honest, behind the pictures there, I'm hiding my boxes of unscanned negatives.
Sure.
You know, just
Well, that's a whole other conversation.
that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
Right.
Should
The
I stop
time and
sharing?
energy that takes, and you know, the efficiencies that could be had, you know, because we're dealing with all these massive estates where, you know, you want to record this stuff, you want to digitize this stuff so it's, you know, it's usable, and it's a big financial and mental undertaking.
Yes, totally.
Sounds
But thank you
fantastic.
guys so much. Should I
pleasure.
stop sharing?
And then there is a question actually, and definitely for Nick and Lacey, I'd love you to weigh in, and Grace as well, and anybody else if you want to put questions in the chat room, please do. But here's something, and it's a little bit of a tough one, and I love the feedback from Nick and Lacey and Grace. But here it is, and I don't know if you guys can read it along in the chat, but it says. And this is from an anonymous attendee. Not a question, an observation. Since the turn of the millennium, the art of portrait photography has been conflated too often by gallerists and curators reflecting other genres of photography, including documentary and reportage. Just because there happens to be a face or even the obscurity of a human body in the frame. This is unfair to actual portraitists who expect to compete with other actual portraitists, not photographers with an agenda or message to report out. I have my thoughts on that, but I'd love to turn that over. Maybe Nick, you want to take that first?
No, I mean, it's an observation that this person has. You know, they are fully in their right to have that observation. I have different observations. You know, my kind of, I don't know, I have a fun job in the sense that I don't have to have a definite answer to any of these kind of questions, because really for me, my job is about helping people kind of find what they want and see what they want and being an educator to those people. So there's lots of different perspectives on what different types of photography can be to different people at different times. And so, you know, I mean, you know, you have to also acknowledge the audience. You know, it's not, you can't as a photographer control how people see your picture or control how people see photography. So I think that's, you know, I guess what I would say. But yeah, it's an observation that, you know, I'm sure a lot of people have had.
That's right. And Lacey, what's your take on it?
I don't know if I should be on or off. So
No, you should be
I'm
on
like
it.
all mixed up.
Yeah. No, because we're in the Q&A part, so I'd love to hear your takes on that thought. In a sense,
So-
the overall, and you studied psychology rather as well, so you could give us some big, you know, words and, you know, refer to Jung and Freud or whatever else. But
No.
what's your take on what a portrait is and isn't?
I mean, I feel like this is a whole conversation. It's very complicated. It's and it's so personal. You know, for me, a portrait is related to a real person. Even though I say I've created mock Victorian portraits, you know, because they involved people. I don't know. For me, a portrait is character, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, for
That
me,
for me, but
yeah,
that
and I divide it into two. You have the eyes of the wind, and I'm very traditional in what I shoot. I've, eyes are the window to the soul type portraits, and then environmental portraits. And this, the latter, the environmental portrait, like your photo of somebody leaning up against a tent, and they're tiny in the frame, maybe 1/70th of the frame. But to me, that's an environmental portrait.
Agreed. Agreed for
Um,
sure.
where somebody might think, oh, no, no, you've got to be more in frame and blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
But they can also be all those things at the same time.
that's what I
Well,
would
that's
take
the
it that way.
thing. I was just going to use an example. This is a little bit of a stretch, and I should have brought this slide. But for my job, I work, like I said, on movie sets, and I worked on the film with Tom Hanks, the Mr. Rogers film, and we were doing a first look picture. So I had this crazy like meta experience because it was supposed to be a picture of Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers. So it was like it wasn't him fully in character and it wasn't fully him as Tom. And so it was sort of like a meta layered experience. And I feel like that can transfer into other subjects and issues of portraiture. Like the circus, like I guess that picked the last frame I showed you of the same girl with two completely different expressions, and one had the flash. And is it up to me to decide? It's like I'm creating, which I'm the editor, I guess, and so if I put one picture out, I'm portraying her in a completely different way than the other one. And it can be very confusing and a little tricky, dangerous sometimes, representation.
And of course, the gods of cleaning the backyard happen to show up right now. Schedule is always strange, so you're going to hear some noise in the background. So sorry, you guys. But Grace, can you
Yeah, Grace,
chime
come
in
back.
on your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting take. I'm personally someone who thinks that the fun part about photography, as it is with any art, is like there's not really rules, you know? And as someone who was a portraiture photographer for 10 years, in the sense that I think what they might be talking about, where it quite literally cannot be mistaken for any other genre of photography but portraits. Um, and I've kind of veered away from that. I see it as perhaps it's a matter of diction, of the lack of words in the names for genres that we haven't come up with yet. But I'm someone who likes looking at things that might not even be a traditional human subject, as this is a portrait, which is what I liked, I think, about this particular, contest, I guess, was that um, I guess in the little caption there was something about how, portraits in the digital era, that doesn't necessarily have to be human subject. And I kind of like that because um, it kind of gets you to be more creative in the way that you look at subjects. And it gets you to be more creative in the ways that you view your own photography and your own style. So, you can consider portraiture to be this one specific thing to you, but um, I think you could also carry that into something completely new. And that's kind of how new art styles, new genres are formed, is someone just taking something and bringing it to something completely different. Yeah.
You're very wise, Grace.
I
Very
was
well
just thinking,
said.
as they say, well beyond your years. So Nick, maybe
Yeah.
we could take it to you to wrap it up. Your thoughts on where we go from here.
Like in life or like far.
You take it wherever you want to go. I mean, maybe keep it sort of
Uh,
connected to what we did here, but
yeah,
go
sure.
wherever you want.
Yeah, I mean, thank you guys for including me on this. It's fun. Like I said, it's always fun to see pictures. It's always fun to see pictures that people are making. I have to look at a select group of people's pictures all the time. So it's always really nice to look at other people's pictures because, yeah, I like doing that. And it was fun to, you know, have this conversation too. So thank you. And if anybody is, you know, in LA, come to the gallery Thursday night from 7 to 9. We have a Julia Fullerton Batten opening, but also just come to the gallery whenever. Like, we have pictures everywhere, we have books everywhere, we're constantly changing things. So it's just, you know, a good place to just come and look.
It's such a slice of LA history, photographic history, and with the greatest openings ever. They're always fun.
It is, and if you go there, go into to a room on the side where the who's who of photography are on rotating display, not just the show that's up there for the month or two.
Yeah.
But I want to thank everybody for coming out, being part of it. Congratulations to our you know, Lacey, Grace, and Jasmine, who's not here. Kevin, thank you so much. You want to have a final word, Kevin, or?
Sure, I can do the ultimate closing. Mark, thank you for driving this event for us. Lacey and Grace, thank you so much for showing up and sharing, and to Jasmine as well for sending in your video. And of course, the big thank you, Nicholas, for taking the time to juror the show for LACP, and also for giving us an hour and 40 minutes of your time today. Super, super appreciated, Nicholas. We really appreciate it, all of us at LACP. Wishing everybody a great Thanksgiving ahead, okay?